Now from Beijing is Ban Ki-moon, former UN Secretary General and chair of the Global Commission on Adaptation. The group is calling on leaders across the board to prepare for and respond to the effects of climate change. Mr. Ban, thank you very much for joining us. Now, you're asking leaders to make some pretty radical changes. What are they?
The Global Commission on Adaptation today released action-oriented, very strong, revolutionary action-oriented report here in Beijing. Then we will be speaking to the UN Climate Summit on September 23rd, and I will be going there myself together with Bill Gates and Kristalina Georgieva, CEO of World Bank. Our main point is that we have to change in a revolutionary way, that in terms of understanding, we must make sure that the climate change crisis must be visible. Climate change is fast approaching, much faster than we may think. That we have to plan rather than short-term plans. We must make it on a basis of a macroeconomic analysis. Then we have to finance in a much bold, much bigger way. The finance is not flowing at the scale and at speed. We must do much more. In that regard, I'm urging world leaders, particularly OECD members, to provide necessary funding, $100 billion to Green Climate Fund. It is now almost an empty shell. There is no time to lose. That is why we are now speaking out to the world leaders who are coming to the Climate Summit on September 23rd, that they must realize that we cannot negotiate with the nature. Nature does not wait. That is our clear and clear-cut message to world leaders.
And in this report, it talks about climate apartheid, that there's a division between the haves who are not so badly affected by climate change and the have-nots who are. Is that something that is already happening?
That is in a metaphorical way that it is a climate apartheid. Those people who are rich, who can afford to address this climate, they can do it still. They may think that the time is on their side, but for those most vulnerable, poorest people who do not have any means and resources, but historically speaking, they have done least to cause this climate phenomenon. Therefore, we can call it clearly, as Dr. Verkooyen of the Global Commission on Adaptation said, in such a way, then there is another moral imperative, human imperative. The least available possible people do not have many means. Therefore, it is morally and politically right that the OECD countries, rich countries, should do all, providing funding, science and technology, their know-how. There is also some environmental imperative, because we do not have any time to wait. We have to act now. Otherwise, we will be regretting for succeeding generation. It is our political and moral responsibility, particularly those leaders. They must make this world much more harmonious, prosperous, and sustainable in terms of living harmoniously with the nature.
But how do you force these world leaders to take this action? As far as I can tell, no one on our planet has yet won an election based primarily on what they're going to do to help the environment. I mean, people are selfish. Politicians care about politics. How do you force any of these world leaders to do what you want them to do?
World leaders must have a far-reaching vision based on humanity, and they have a moral and political, historical responsibility to address this issue. As you said, they are much more interested in their own domestic politics, elections. Just they are interested in being elected, and they make a lot of pledges, promises, but by the time they are in the office, they just do not have this climate agenda embedded in their national priority agenda. That is what I have been regretting very much while serving at the United Nations. That situation still continues while I am also a retired Secretary General. Therefore, I've been urging world leaders, particularly those big countries like the United States. I'm urging President Trump to implement what he pledged during his presidential campaign, that he would invest $1 trillion to beef up resilient infrastructure. According to American Association of American Society of Engineering, if this resilient infrastructure is not well funded, then there will be at least 2.5 million job losses, and there will be at least $4 trillion gap in national GDP. Therefore, it is very important that countries like the United States, the most powerful, most resourceful, the richest country in the world, should lead this campaign. For that, I'm urging American administration to return to Paris Climate Change Agreement as soon as possible, and the OECD countries, they should do their moral and political and historical duties to help those vulnerable countries. I have been visiting many places around the world. Wherever I was able to see the climate phenomena, the Arctic ice is melting, and the people are now burning the rainforest, particularly in Amazon River basins. These kind of action must be stopped immediately, and therefore we do all what we can do.
Mr. Ban, we are going to have to leave it there. Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General, former Secretary General of the United Nations, thank you very much for your time.